It's time for our last curriculum review video for this year, covering our high school electives in our homeschool. Hey guys, welcome back to my Practically Imperfect Life. This video will be the fifth and final one in my curriculum review series, where I let you know what we thought of the things we used in the 2023 and 2024 school year when my youngest was a sophomore and my oldest was a junior. We've already covered math, science, English, social studies, history classes, and today we're wrapping things up with the electives. So I have 3 electives to cover today, one that my son did, one that my daughter did, and then one that both of them took. I'll start with my daughter's philosophy course. She did Philosophy in the Western World from Seven Sisters Homeschool. And we have used a few things from them before. She did their introduction to psychology a few years ago. And we were looking for something that was kind of like a humanities course for her to do. Now, my daughter is very much a logical thinker. Philosophy is definitely not something that's a natural subject for her. She just likes to think of things kind of as they are, and this whole idea of having different thought processes and ways of analyzing things was really not her jam or something that came easily to her. That being said, this is very much an introductory course. You are going to get some good general overviews of different philosophers throughout history and what their perspectives were and what they've kind of contributed, but you are not going to be an expert by any means unless you dive much further into these topics than what the basic curriculum provides. What you get when you purchase this course are PDF downloads. So you get a PDF download of the textbook. What we did is I printed it off and I spiral bound it for her to use. Homework questions are included in the textbook along with what they call enrichment assignments. Then you'll get a PDF of the answer key. So all of those homework questions answered as well as answers to the tests. And then there are printable tests. It is set up in 30 weeks or 30 lessons. However, some weeks are designed to have activities that are done over multiple weeks, and I'll get more into that. It goes all the way back to Greek philosophers and then takes you through history. So you're going to hear about things that were, or people from like the Reformation, more modern times, and again, some of those more ancient philosophers, and it takes you through chronologically. And we did it by I assigned a chapter on Monday, and her homework was to read that chapter during the week and answer the homework questions, which were due by Friday. Almost always, she would just read the chapter, answer the homework questions on Monday, and have it all done. And then each week they offer different optional enrichment assignments. Sometimes there's 1, and then sometimes there's 2 to choose from. And I did not assign these every single week. Sometimes I would because I felt like it was a worthwhile enrichment activity. I thought it would be something that would maybe challenge her a little bit or add to the curriculum. And sometimes the enrichment assignments were just a little, I don't know, almost I felt like more like an afterthought or a busy work. And I'll give you some examples here when I kind of give you a closer look at some of the pieces of the book. So we did not always do the enrichment assignments. Now, every couple of chapters, there would be a test that would cover several chapters. Usually, I think it was like 4 or 5 chapters, but they would cover several of them. So she would sometimes only have philosophy work to do on Monday. And then a couple weeks later, she would have a test with the occasional enrichment assignments put in there as well. In reality, this is a course that probably could have been condensed down to 1 semester simply because it really didn't take her all that long to do. We probably could have had her do something on maybe Monday and then again on Wednesday, do 2 chapters a week, and then the tests a little more frequently. It is what it is. But I didn't want to crunch it into 1 semester initially because I wasn't sure how long the things would take her to do. And I also didn't want to like overwhelm her with a bunch of work in 1 semester. So spreading it out was nice in that, you know, she had plenty of time to do all of the assignments, to prepare for tests, to work on the enrichment. Now, when she got to the end though, Chapter 29, I believe it was, had an enrichment assignment that took several weeks to complete, or that she was supposed to complete over several weeks. And then chapter 30 is a chapter that talks about their kind of big final assignment. And that was something that was assigned out to her, and she was given 3 weeks to complete. Now, even with those expansions, she's still going to be done with philosophy early. She'll be done about week 33 in our homeschool, and then she'll be done with that course for the year. So let me show you just a closer look at some of the things from the textbook and the assignments, and that will probably highlight a little bit of why I end up rating this what I do. All right, let's give you a little closer look at just a few things from the textbook. So this is the PDF download of the textbook, and I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna skip down a couple pages here to show you how they think that the course should be, I don't know, assigned as far as a regular philosophy course and honors and so on. They recommend that if you just want to do this as a college prep course, you read the book and you do the homework assignments each week. I don't know if I necessarily would consider it college prep, but that's just me. Then for advanced, reading the book, doing the homework assignments, and choosing 12 of the enrichment exercises and complete the assignment, or replace them by reading articles or a book and writing a 2-page paper. And then for honors, read the book, do the homework, do all of the enrichment, or read extra articles and extra books. And that's just kind of what they recommend. I basically ignored this completely. And then there's the book list here. So you can see from the table of contents the different topics that were covered. Again, we started with the ancient Greek philosophers. We moved up through some of the more famous names, Plato and Aristotle. We had Roman philosophers. We talked about early church reformers. And then it started to get more into the modern ages. We got into the rationalists, the romantics, and then to the 20th century and philosophy more currently. And you'll see here, chapter 30 says your turn, and I'll give you a closer look at that assignment. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to skip ahead to one of the chapters and show you kind of one of the things that just kind of irked me with this. All right, chapter 2. So this kind of started right off the bat. Chapter 2 is 2 pages long. That's it. The whole chapter, 2 pages. We have several homework assignments. And the very first question is write an entire paragraph describing ancient Miletus. A whole paragraph. We only got 2 pages of information. And so it actually is set up to where you have to do additional research on each chapter to really be able to answer the homework questions. And the enrichment assignment for this week, it was write a 9-thought comment or discussion between 3 philosophers. And again, we have 2 pages for this chapter. And this is where my daughter started to get frustrated because she wasn't always able to answer homework questions and the enrichment assignments based off what she was reading. It got to a point where she had to do outside research. And I actually ended up just telling her, don't worry about writing entire paragraphs to answer these homework questions. If it's only a couple of sentences, that's fine. I didn't anticipate needing to have her do a bunch of outside research. And had I known that, I would have looked at, well, do we need to gather other resources in advance? Do I need to have other books available? Do I need to have websites bookmarked for her? To me, if you're asking homework questions that are supposed to come from the reading assignment, then the answer should be able to be pulled from that reading assignment. And that is just my thought on that. If your answers need to come from outside sources, that needs to be clearly indicated when you buy the curriculum so you can get those things in advance. And a lot of the chapters are short like that. So chapter 3, Ancient Italy, we had 1, 2, 3 pages, 4. So a little bit longer chapter there. And this was one where I think most of the questions could be found. And then here's another example of an enrichment assignment. Design an advertisement for the school of each Roman natural philosopher. And this would be the type of enrichment assignment that I would just skip because she's in high school and she thinks doing things like make a poster project or draw a picture or design an ad just seems kind of silly. And I agreed with her. So those would be the types of enrichment assignments that we skipped. Now let me go ahead and I'm going to skip all the way down to chapter 30 and show you this final assignment. All right, so chapter 30 is entitled Your Turn, and this is where she wrote a big final paper. Well, she's in the process of writing this big final paper now. So in this paper, you are synthesizing the philosophies you have studied and formulating your own personal philosophy and then writing it out in 6 sections. Now, this is an assignment that has been a little hard for her. It's supposed to be 5 pages in all. It's supposed to cover these different things and include, details and references and all of that jazz. This is going to be a tough one for her. Now, this assignment is definitely proving to be a little bit of a challenge for her. And again, it's just because of her way of thinking. She just doesn't naturally, get all of these different points of philosophy. And when she came and said, I got to write 5 pages about my own personal philosophy, I don't even know where to start. I actually steered her more towards looking at our value system as a family and our faith background. And I told her, I said, pull from that, because that is really what has shaped your life and shaped your viewpoints on things. And you can use that as your reference or as your starting point with everything. So overall, I would probably give this elective maybe, 2.5, 3 stars. It's okay. It's okay. It does give a basic introduction to philosophy and different philosophers. I agree, it does that. It doesn't take very long. Again, this could easily be condensed down into a 1-semester course. There is not enough there to really drag it out for a whole year, unless you assign all of the enrichment homework and you encourage your student to do the extra book reading. There is a little book list in there where you can choose to do additional books. If you pulled all of those things in, yes, you could definitely stretch this out and really bulk it up. However, as it's just presented with these few pages per chapter, a couple of homework questions, and then the every couple of chapters tests, easily could be one semester. But again, we spread it out over the year because I don't know at the time. Again, the enrichment assignments, some of them I think are worthwhile. Some I think are just kind of like fillers and just kind of silly assignments. That might work great for some students and not for others. I mean, my son probably wouldn't mind doing a poster project every now and then, but he would hate having to write extra paragraphs or extra papers or conversations between philosophers. And I also think they really needed to make it clear that you're not going to find all of the information you need in the textbook. You are going to have to do some outside research and maybe just present it that way, because there are courses where that's needed, where you're trying to teach your kids to do their own research, to find out other sources, verify that those sources are good ones. Add that to the course description when you sell the product. Just say, hey, while it gives a basic introduction, we are encouraging students each week to do their own research and pull from other things or suggest some other books to have on hand just to kind of help out. So that is philosophy in the Western world. Next up for my son is a nutrition and fitness elective. Now this is one that I really kind of designed myself because he had expressed an interest in improving his eating habits and his workout routines. He is 15, almost 16, very into weightlifting and working out and really trying to kind of build up his strength. My son is now huge. He's easily over 6 feet tall now. And just at that age where he's very into physical fitness, I thought it would be great to just design an elective he could do where he is getting that additional information on nutrition and food choices, but also pull in his love of working out and really kind of emphasize doing that safely and appropriately. So there have been 2 pieces to this course. So at the start of the year, we had him doing workouts at the gym under supervision to make sure he was doing things the right way. Because obviously I don't want him going and weightlifting and hurting himself. We don't want any joint injuries or muscle injuries if they can be avoided. And then after that, he was to log the different types of workouts he did. He wasn't required to do, certain ones. I didn't say you have to run, you have to bike, you have to do an arm day, you have to do a leg day. Nothing like that. But simply logging what types of workouts he did during the week. When he had things like basketball practice, that counted as a workout because obviously you're spending several hours and you're working really hard at those practices. But he also has a membership at our local gym. Both him and his sister do, and they go over there together several days a week. They oftentimes like to go early in the morning so they can get a workout done to sort of start off the day. In fact, that's where they're at right now while I'm filming and doing that. And he has naturally created a rotation for himself. He'll have an arm day, he'll have a core day, he'll have a back day, leg day, and he keeps track of that. He's got a whiteboard up in his room where he was marking down the different sort of exercise groupings and different types of lifting he should do for different body parts. And that's something that he has been researching and putting together on his own. And I think it's great. I think it's wonderful that he's really getting into that, and you can see the difference. I mean, he's no longer my little boy. Everyone comments on like how big he looks. I mean, just like in the shoulders and the back and everything. And it's just because he's been working really hard this year, and I'm super proud of him for that. Now, the second half of that was on nutrition. And so I did a little searching to try to find a course that just focused on nutrition. There's a lot of health courses out there that will touch on nutrition or have a chapter or two on it, but I didn't want a full-on health course. I just wanted nutrition. And I found this set. So this is a nutrition set, and let me see if I can remember. Let me look and see who the publisher was again, because I can never remember. This is International Learning Solutions is the publisher, and I'll link it. I found this on Rainbow Resource. But this is a set of 6 unit booklets. So there are these, and then I have an answer key for like booklets 1 through 3 have one answer key, booklets 4 through 6. So the first unit is just nutrition science, the balanced diet. Then there's one on water, fat, fiber, whole grains, starches, and sweets, protein, vitamins and minerals, vegetables, fruit, and weight control. And within the books, there are, let me find one that's not been filled out yet because we haven't gotten to the last unit yet. Okay, so to give you an idea of what it looks like, there are unit projects listed near the front. So this is this is faith-based, so it does incorporate like scripture memorization, and I do like how in the introduction it talks about, God intends for us to take care of our bodies well. We should eat right. We should make sure we get enough sleep. We should drink enough water. We should exercise. It'll pull from scripture examples like from Daniel, the book of Daniel, where he doesn't want to eat the foods that the Babylonians are. They want to maintain the diet that they're supposed to follow, and they show that they are stronger because of it. But there is scripture memorization. There are ideas to try. There are recipes you can try as well. But then typically what it will have is a section of reading and then a section of questions, whether that's fill in the blank or true, false, and things like that. You can see a few more here like that. Now, there are quizzes included throughout this, and they are typically one-page quizzes. You could tear these out if you wanted your student to, not have access to anything else in the unit book. I just have him fill them out right there in the book. And then there is a test for each of the 6 units. They are in the books themselves. You can pop them out then, and then they're their own separate little booklet that they can fill out. They will include matching, true, false, multiple choice, and a couple of fill in the blanks. This isn't, again, going to make you a nutrition expert. However, I do feel like even though they're, just 6 little mini books, they are packed with a ton of good information. And it's easy to break this down into little small assignments. he is assigned something from nutrition 3 days a week. So Monday, Wednesday, Fridays, and then Tuesday, Thursdays, he doesn't have anything to do. But again, he's logging his workouts throughout the week as well. And I just looked at it as these little sections. So the way I would assign it, for example, I would say read fruits or vegetables and fruit and answer the questions on page 3. So I would just tell him what unit we're on. So unit 6, the subtopic, and then the questions that are on there. I would assign quizzes on their own day, and I would assign tests on their own day. And even by spreading it out and doing it just 3 days a week, he's still wrapping up nutrition before the end of the school year. All in all, I think this elective is probably something I would rate around a 4. He's enjoyed it. He's learned a lot. It's something that really played to his interests, and I don't know. I think they're just good little books. I think these are easy enough reading and understanding that you could probably do this with middle schoolers. If you have middle schoolers who maybe you just want to give more information on healthy eating habits. I think, all kids should understand why it's important that we get a balanced diet, why different vitamins and minerals are important, what they do, why water is so important, and why they need that. And it's just, I don't know. I felt like it was a good course overall. It is faith-based, and that is incorporated throughout the reading. So bear that in mind. If you're looking for a secular curriculum, this will not work for you. But if you'd like a good nutrition course, I think this is a great one to start with. And the last elective I have to talk about is one that both of my kids are doing this year. And that is Chemistry in the Kitchen from Guest Hollow, which we are calling Food Science on our transcript. Now, to explain, if you are brand new and you maybe have seen my science review and you go, well, wait, didn't your son do chemistry from Berry & Builders? Yes, he did take a chemistry course from Berry & Builders this year. And in fact, my oldest, who's a junior, took chemistry from Berry & Builders last year. So why am I doing a Chemistry in the Kitchen course? Well, I am a big fan of the Guest Hollow programs. My kids have been using them for their history courses, and I just wanted to find a way to incorporate more of their courses. And I was reviewing courses last year while I was curriculum shopping, and I came across that one, and I thought it sounded really interesting. But my daughter had already done Berry & Builders. We had really liked it, and I had already pre-purchased an extra student workbook and test to use with my son for this current school year. It was already in my mind. Well, that's what we're doing. I've already bought it. That's the plan. On top of that, I was a chemistry major in college. That was one of my majors. And I very much had the mindset that chemistry needed to be taught a certain way, and it needed to include certain things because that's how I was taught in high school, whether that was my regular chem classes, my AP classes, or all my college chemistry classes. So it was really hard for me to get out of that mindset that chemistry needed to be taught in a traditional way. It was a big challenge for me as mom and as teacher. But I really liked the idea of the course. I loved the idea that chemistry concepts were taught more in theory and then put into practice through recipes and experiments in the kitchen. And I mentioned it to my son. I said, well, what about this as an elective, but we'll term it differently and you'll get to do the cooking and everything. And he said, okay. And my daughter overheard me and she goes, wait a minute, he gets to do a class where he gets to do a bunch of cooking? She's like, that's not fair. And I said, well, do you want to do it as an elective too? And she said, yeah. So that's how both of my kids ended up doing this as an elective. And honestly, I'm really glad for it because my daughter is wanting to go into, when she goes to college, she wants to study athletic training or nutrition, performance training, and that's really what she wants to focus on. So nutrition is obviously going to play a big part of that. How things work in the kitchen will play a big part of that. They both really enjoy cooking and baking, and I just thought it would be a perfect fit for them. So this course does come from Guest Hollow. Again, this is one that comes with a PDF download. you get a PDF of what they call the schedule, and that's really the meat and potatoes of their courses. It tells you what things are going to be done on what weeks. But this is a non-traditional course, so there's no textbook. There's no online textbook. There's no physical textbook. Instead, you have a book list that tells you different books your kids are going to be reading from on different weeks. And the book lists from Guess Holler are always just, I always think they're just amazing. I read along with what my kids are reading, and I'm learning a lot along the way. Now, that doesn't mean that every book is a 5-star book in my mind and in the kids' mind, but the majority of them are really good books and have a lot of great information. Some of them are going to be a little bit shorter and easier to read. Some are going to definitely be a little more of a challenge for your students to read. Or if you have a student who's not a strong reader or a slow reader, you might have to spread out reading assignments a little bit longer. They also incorporate videos for your kids to watch. A lot of times these videos are either showing how to do some of the cooking experiments or make some of the recipes, and sometimes they are ones that focus more on teaching the chemistry principles. There will be online resources. Like a recent one was the science of Legos. How is it that Legos are made? So it gives a lot of good information in like a printable infographic, but that's something that my son, who's really into Legos, would find really interesting. And they'll have bits like that. Then there will be different hands-on activities for each week. A lot of the activities, the first probably 3/4 of the curriculum, were recipes that came from certain books in the curriculum. You would go to that page, you'd make that recipe, and it was demonstrating a chemistry principle. An example, we did blue corn pancakes. I think it was the blue corn pancake experiment, where it was like an acid-base reaction that was occurring. So when you did that recipe, something in particular happened, and that was because of the way the acids and bases were reacting in the experiment. I can't remember the details on it exactly. It was from way at the start of the year. But that just gives an example. You do the recipe, and then it was highlighting a chemistry principle. And then as it got towards the latter part of the year, there's more things that feel a bit more like experiments, but they are using things within the kitchen in order to demonstrate that purpose. So you don't need traditional lab equipment to do any of this stuff. You simply need recipe ingredients or things that you already have in your kitchen. It is a course that takes the entire year to do, and they do offer a 4-week supplement that you can add on at the beginning of the year if your student has no information on chemistry, like no previous knowledge of chemistry, and it does a little more of a quick intro. So we skipped that little supplement because, again, my daughter had already taken chemistry, my son was currently taking chemistry, and we instead just focused on working through the schedule and the activities on there. I don't assign everything that's on the schedule every single week. I pick and choose what we're going to do, which books we're going to do, which videos they're going to watch, what activities they're going to do in order to make it manageable, because they always provide you with more options than what you can reasonably do. And that's kind of the idea, is that you can pick and choose what will work for your family. There is also a PDF download of a workbook, and I did print that out and put that together. I spiral bound that for both of my kids. So as they are reading certain books, there are corresponding questions in the workbook that they are supposed to answer. Now, I did want to show just a couple of the books that the kids have read and been using throughout the year. They have what they call like the spine book or the main book that they will read from each week. The first, little over first half of the year, that pulled from 2 different books called What Einstein Told Us Cook and What Einstein Kept Under His Hat. Now, these books, a few pages are assigned at a time, and then a lot of the recipes will be found within this as well. The first book, let me see if I can find some of the chapters here to talk, just to give you a background. There's a chapter on sugars, one on salts, fats, chemicals in the kitchen, fire and ice, liquid refreshment, mysterious microwaves, tools and technology. So they'd read a few pages from the chapter, sometimes make a recipe from it, and then have workbook questions. And then the second book picks up after that, and then it kind of goes further. This one covers drinks, down on the farm, what a man soweth, fruits, greens, let's see, carnival for carnivores, spices, and it's really interesting because it does give the chemistry behind things that we're seeing in the kitchen. Why do things cook the way they do? Why do things react the way they do? If I recall, when there was a chapter talking about breads, it even basically told you that you'd really never need a recipe for bread. If you understand the basics of the chemistry of those ingredients, you could make your own adjustments and actually come up with your own bread recipes. Right now, they finished both of these. They're reading a book called Taste, and then their last sort of spine book for the year will be Carbon Chemistry. Now, out of all of the books that they are assigned throughout the year, this is the one that feels the most like a traditional chemistry book. It does have actual chemical formulas in it, different things, but it's not like as heavy as a regular chemistry book, but it just looks a lot more familiar to me. As someone who took organic chemistry. So that's probably the one that will feel the most like traditional chemistry, both for me and for them. But then they read just a whole bunch of other books along the way. We've got some great reference books like this one on elements. They also have one that's on molecules that they're using right now. These are more like picture books, really. They've got really amazing photos in there. But if you read the information, that's really helpful. During the first part of the year, they actually each day were introduced to a different element, and there was assigned reading in here that introduced that element, and then there were videos. It was I think it was called the Periodic Table of Element videos. It's a college group of professors that put together informational videos about the different elements. So they would watch that video and read the few pages on here, so they got a bit of an introduction to those different elements. We've read books like Slow Death by Rubber Duck, Napoleon's Buttons, 17 Molecules That Changed History, and my personal favorite, Pandora's Lunchbox, How Processed Food Took Over the American Meal. Just really interesting mix of books. I will say that some of these books have some heavy reading assignments. There have been days where it feels like between the books there's like 30 or 40 pages for kids to read, which means that you have to pick and choose what you're going to do. If you have kids who are fast readers or are good with heavier reading assignments, you could assign all of it, or you could spread it out more. The reading list gets smaller as you get closer to the end of the year, so you could push some books towards the end of the year, and as the other assignments are lighter, pick a book that you skipped during the year and go back and assign it. Like, you definitely do that. Or you just have to, be discerning and decide which ones you're going to do and which ones you're not going to do. I wouldn't skip the spine books because so much is pulled from those. And again, a lot of the experiments and the recipes are all pulled from those. My daughter did make the observation that she didn't like the recipes all that much from the What Einstein books, What Einstein Told Us Cook and What Einstein Kept Under His Hat. She's like, they're okay. They didn't taste, she said they tasted okay, but they weren't the best. And a lot of times she especially would tweak those recipes, or she would look at what the recipe was for, and then she would find another version of it to make. It was still making the same thing, just with little changes to the recipe. She's definitely one who feels more comfortable with experimenting in the kitchen with recipes. She very rarely will actually follow recipes. She a lot of times just kind of says, it needs a little of this and a little of that and whatnot. Whereas I'm very much a follow the recipe person. So, I'd be watching her and be like, are you sure? But it always turned out great. So just caused me a little stress. Now my son does follow the recipes pretty directly. He hasn't quite gotten to the point in his cooking skills where he can make those random changes. But that's the book side of things. Now, pros and cons of this curriculum. On the pro side, I think, as all the Guest Hollow courses do, it does a really wonderful job of pulling a lot of different things together for your students to do. They have great books, they have great videos, they have lots of hands-on activities. Again, there's the infographics you can print out. There's just a lot of different things to choose from. So no matter what your child's learning style is, they can have some piece of this that's going to help with them on that. I also like how thoroughly they can come to understand chemistry concepts. And I think concepts in chemistry are where a lot of people struggle. you might be able to figure out how to balance a chemical equation. But do you understand what that equation is for and what's happening there? And do you understand how that can be applied in real life? And I think that's where a lot of kids in traditional chemistry courses get stuck, is they memorize certain things, but they don't necessarily have understanding. And this course focuses on the understanding and not the memorization, if that makes sense. So I really like that. I also really like that, again, it got the kids in the kitchen and doing these different types of recipes and experiments and just making some unique things that they probably wouldn't have otherwise done. My daughter made spicy chocolate crinkles, and that just was something where I was like, what? And she goes, yeah, it's the assignment for this week. It's spicy chocolate crinkles. And it was just something unique and different to try. And it was not something that we ever would have done, but it taught us how different spices will enhance or change different flavors. And I thought that that was really an interesting little experiment to do. And it was very good to taste test. On the kind of the con side with things. One, it is a chemistry course that includes none of the traditional math, which I guess you could see as a pro or con. If you have a student who's not strong in math, or they aren't planning to do anything necessarily science related later on, they can definitely get away with not having to learn the math behind chemistry. Now, if it's part of a requirement in your state where your student does have to have that included, or if they are looking to maybe jump into like an AP chemistry course or something like that later on, they probably should know the math that's included with chemistry. And in that case, maybe a more traditional course would be more appropriate. I have seen on some of the Facebook groups that Guest Hollow has where people have recommended certain books, like workbooks that introduce chemistry math, that you could just work into this course as well. But it is math free. And I also feel like out of all of the different workbooks we've used for their courses, this is probably the one workbook that was my least favorite. The history books are what we've seen mostly, and those are just filled with all kinds of illustrations and pictures and a variety of questions and think but don't discuss. It feels like a lot more work was put into those workbooks than this one. It doesn't have pictures and illustrations. It's just a straight list of questions, and it tells you which books they're pulled from. So you're reading through a reading assignment and you're answering those questions. And it's usually about a page to 3 pages, depending on how many different books are assigned. And a lot of times I feel like it is just straight, find this information, copy it down in there, and not so much, analyze this or explain this or put it in your own words. And I think that might be a little bit of a mixed opportunity, because I think knowing how amazing the workbooks are that we've used for the other courses from them, I think this one probably could have a little bit of tweaking done to it, and I think it would be amazing. And the only other thing that I think is missing is some sort of lab analysis. Now, I know we're not doing traditional labs in this course. We're cooking things. However, if you're just going and doing the recipe and you're not talking about it afterwards or during, or kind of looking back at how things turned out, then you're kind of missing the point of the recipes. It's not a read and then just learn to cook things course. You're supposed to be cooking these things to help you understand the chemistry principle that you're learning. And so in order to do that, you've got to talk about what it is that you're making. And you can use the books themselves as a guide. I mean, the books are telling you what principle you're supposed to be seeing. So you as the parent should look at that and say, okay, this is what this experiment is, or this recipe is supposed to be teaching. And then talk to your student about it. Why did the thing you make turn out the way it did? If it didn't turn out right, where did we go wrong? What part of this chemical reaction that's supposed to be occurring while you're cooking didn't happen the way it was supposed to? And then why? You really got to look at that. And I think a great addition to this curriculum would be if they threw in like a simple lab form or a cooking experiment form, where maybe the student could write in the name of the recipe that they're making and, kind of treat it like a lab report. So what ingredients are we throwing in there? What is the chemistry principle we're supposed to see? What were your results? And then discuss. If you were making different types of bread, Why did some of your bread turn out rock hard? Why did it not rise? Why did it feel, gritty? What happened that made that result occur? With like the acid base with the blue corn pancakes, if they didn't turn out the right color, why? Did you not add enough of something? Did we add too much of something else? I just think it would be a way of kind of making them feel a little more like a lab. And that might help parents who live in states where their state requires a certain number of labs, courses, science courses with labs, to be able to kind of, I don't want to say justify the course, but to be able to say, yes, we actually did a lab component, and each time we did one of these cooking labs, we talked about it. So I think maybe adding in something like that in the workbook, maybe a page that could just be, printed out however many times we need it and filled out, would be really helpful. All in all, I'm definitely going to say this is a 4-star curriculum. I do really enjoy these courses from them, and I've really thought that the book list has been great. I have seen how it's helped both of my kids understand chemistry better. And again, as somebody who is a chemistry major, I'm a total geek when it comes to all things science. I just appreciate how it has built that understanding for them. For those of you who've been around my channel for a while, you might say, well, wait a minute, didn't you also do German and Bible study with your kids? And yes, we do family group subjects where we study German together, and we do different devotions. We've mostly been using ones from Daily Grace Co. I have really talked about those two things throughout several videos in the year, especially in my day in the life when I'm showing you the things we're working on. So I'm not going to do a separate review video on those, but if you have any specific questions about either our German courses or our Bible studies, you're welcome to drop a comment, and I will be happy to answer those for you. Thank you so much for joining me throughout this entire curriculum review series. I hope this has given you a better understanding of how we have used this curriculum throughout the year, what we have thought of it, what has worked, not worked. And if you choose to use some of this curriculum, maybe it'll give you some ideas on ways you can tweak it, or adjust it, or use it a little differently in your homeschool to make it work well for you. In the coming weeks, I will then be moving on to showing you my 2024-2025 curriculum choices for both of my kids. I now have everything on hand. I'm really excited to be able to share all of that with you very soon. Thank you so much for joining me for today's video, everybody. If you have any follow-up questions, leave a comment down below. I also have my link to my Buy Me a Coffee page down there for you too. There is a shop tab on that page where you can find all of the different homeschooling resources that I have been creating and sharing, from my How to Write a Research Paper to my transcript workbook, high school outlines, my Christmas Around the World unit study. All of the different things I've been sharing throughout the past couple of years can be found there and downloaded. As always, appreciate having you guys here with me today. Happy homeschooling, and I'll see you in the next one.